Hey guys, Samurai here. Time for another review, this time based on the Sinnoh League. This league is often regarded as one of the best and as a lot of people's favorite. A lot of people in past years say I should have won the Sinnoh League or been retired here. What's my opinion on this league? Well, let's get started and we'll figure it out on the way. The one thing that sets apart this league from all the other leagues is that this league has been heavily built up through months and months of filler. Like, I'm talking a whole year of filler. Yeah. So this league has a lot to live up to, especially after how much I like the Hoenn League. We're gonna have to see if this league can stack up. Let's get started with episode 182, An Old Family Blend. Yeah, so this episode, everybody remembers this episode for certain reasons. So this episode follows Ash and Co as they make it to Lily of the Valley Island, and Ash goes to sign up after he calls up Professor Oak to bring back his old Pokemon, but they don't reveal who's coming back except Totodile. Pretty good continuity there, guys. Like I like that they remembered Totodile was caught in a different Pokeball. But otherwise, Ash reunites with his Pokemon one by one, and I feel like I'm skipping something very important. Like, I wrote a whole what if about it. Oh yeah, Sinnoh evolves out of nowhere, but just like that joke came out of nowhere. But otherwise, it's pretty cool. And the episode ends, except for one thing. They showed Glalie, and Glalie never got to battle. Yes, I'm pissed off. How could you disrespect the chat like that? But also, Ash is revealed to be facing Nando. This episode definitely gets a B rank. It's a very strong introduction to the league as of right now. Episode 183, A League Unleashed. So this episode follows up on the last episode with Ash versus Nando. But something I find interesting is that Ash doubts himself after talking to Paul. And he states he's not special for winning 8 gym badges just because there's like 100 other trainers here who have done the same thing Ash has done. But he remembered why he made it this far, by believing in his Pokemon, and the next morning, he switches out one more Pokemon and the battle starts. This fight has spectacular fight choreography. Back when the Pokemon anime didn't have super great animation, they relied on fight choreography, and this is one of the best examples. My favorite moment is when Ash used Sleep Talk, truly the turning point of the battle. Ash does end up winning the battle, and also the mysterious trainer using a Darkrai is revealed. So this episode gets a high B rank, and this was a great first battle to the league and a fantastic introduction. Episode 184, Casting Apollon Berry. This episode reveals that Ash is facing Conway in the 3rd round, but before that we get Paul versus Barry, and let's just say Barry got completely owned. Paul went the whole match without losing a single Pokemon. An interesting thing to note, this is the first time we see Paul's Electivire, so that's a fun fact. Not to mention, we get a name drop for the Darkrai trainer being Tobias, you know, the guy I made a whole video on. B rank, another very enjoyable episode. Episode 185, Working on a Right Move. This episode shows the fight between Ash and Conway, and it's definitely interesting on how they made Conway fight like a competitive player, raising his Pokemon stats and using moves like Trick Room. But by far, what we remember most from this match is Gribble mastering Draco Meteor. This gets another B rank as it was another great episode. Episode 186, Familiarity Breeds Strategy. This episode starts with Gliscor returning from his training, but while that is happening, Paul was talking to Don about Ash, but they do meet up, and then we skip to present time and to the battle. And now we go into the Wet and Elite Ash vs. Paul. And this was a great introduction with Infernape knocking out Aggron, Paul using the counter shield to throw off Ash, only for Weasel to come in with Ice Aqua Jet and take it out, only for Paul to send out Drapion, which has Weasel in a bind. And the episode ends after this. This episode is a solid A rank. This battle was a great introduction on both sides, starting to be equal with Paul taking the counter shield and Ash using Ice Aqua Jet. This battle is surely a sign of things to come. Episode 187, A Real Rival Rouser. This episode starts off with the other left off. Ash's Weasel still caught by Drapion, but manages to escape. but Paul doesn't let him go for long, and both him and Star Raptor get knocked out. Torterra goes up, and then Torterra goes down, so Gliscor has to come in against a Ninjask, with Gliscor getting switched out for Infernape, and Ash using Dig to get rid of Flare Blitz, not to mention taking out Ninjask. Ash sends out Pikachu, and Paul follows with Frostlass. Paul uses Hail to disguise Frostlass movements, and Ash does overcome this, but with no issue. Another A rank. All they really need to do is stick the landing. This was another very enjoyable episode. Drobion's definitely proving to be a formidable foe for Ash to face, and is the reason why he's losing so many of his Pokemon. Episode 188, Battling a Thaw in Relations. This episode concludes the battle, and Gliscor starts by getting hit by Pin Missile, but does end up coming on top of Drapion with a Fire Fang. Paul sends out his last Pokemon being Electivire. He just wails on Gliscor, knocking it out. Pikachu follows up and has one of the coolest clashes in the anime, with Thunder Punch and Iron Tail, only to be knocked out by Brick Break. So Ash's last Pokemon is Infernape, and this is the most intense the anime has been since Gary in the Silver League, but with so much more weight behind it. Ash and Paul's whole rivalry comes down to here, their ideologies, and it's a clash of epic proportions. Infernape finally goes berserk with using Blaze, and knocks out Electivire, giving Ash the win. They are later talking about this, and they make up, I guess you could say. Paul says he wants to challenge Brandon again. Also, Cynthia says they are going to meet up in the Champions League, so Journeys, make that happen. This episode gets an S rank, truly a perfect episode, as Ash, the win felt well deserved, and now we move on to the Darkrai trainer, so this should be interesting. Episode 189, the Semi-Final Frontier. This episode has the battle between Ash and Tobias. And Ash loses, like, very bad, like laughably bad, but I'm overselling it. Let's just say Tobias only has these two Pokemon. But Subtile did take out Darkrai with help from Heracross, Ash showing that he's using the smart, knowing how Darkrai moves. This actually makes the Darkrai movie canon, right? Because Ash knows that Darkrai can give people nightmares, so using Heracross again was a pretty smart tactic. Not to mention, we all bring up this Sceptile feat. Every AG stan I know brings up this Sceptile feat. We get it, he used Leaf Blade and knocked out Darkrai. And Pikachu ties with a Latias. Yeah, AG stats, how did Swallow do? Last I checked, it got one-shotted. So yeah, y'all can suck it. But otherwise, this was actually a pretty good battle. While I do think Tobias did not need to be added, I see why they wanted to make Ash lose, and making him lose to legendaries is the least egregious one of them all. Not to mention, it gave us a great battle. This one gets a solid B rank in my opinion. Alright, we're done all the episodes. Overall, aren't you forgetting something? What? You have to mention something. Okay, I think it's time I should talk about the elephant in the room. Should Ash have won the Sinnoh League? Yeah, by the way, I'm recording this one separate compared to the original one, because the original one there was points I wanted to bring up, but I didn't bring them up in the original, so this is a new recorded take. But yeah, should Ash have won the Sinnoh League? It's a hard question to answer, because I've seen like two sides to this argument, and I'm gonna start this one off the exact same. I've seen two sides to this argument all the time. I've seen Ash should have won the Sinnoh League, it should have been replaced in Black and White, or Ash shouldn't have won the Alola League. I don't know how we got to Alola. Ash shouldn't have won the Alola League, and it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. I've seen these arguments all the time, whether they be online, offline, voice, text. It gets repetitive sometimes. What do I think personally? it comes down to what I said like a lot of times. There's no such thing as peak Ash, and I've had this like argument a lot of the time. There's no such thing as peak Ash. You can have your favorite version of Ash, and I'm not going to take that away from you. DP Ash isn't peak Ash in terms of skill, but he can be your favorite version of him. That's completely fine. I encourage it. But he isn't peak Ash in terms of skill. Black and White, Sun and Moon, XY have all improved Ash in terms of skill. Saying that he peaked in DP, that is just false, because you're telling me he didn't improve at all or didn't learn anything at all in his times in Unova, Kalos, and Alola. Maybe you could argue that now that he's not learning anything, you could argue that, but that's still saying that he learned everything he needed to learn. He's essentially a Pokemon Master now in Sinnoh. That is what you are saying with full confidence when you say that is peak Ash in terms of skill. He is not peak Ash in terms of skill. Maybe you could say in character, that is fine, I guess, but in terms of skill, no, that is completely false. Another thing I have to bring up is, of course, the Tobias battle. The Ash defeating legendaries, you might think, oh, Ash defeating legendaries. Ash defeating legendaries in the grand scheme of things does not matter. The only reason why we care he fought these legendary beasts and won is because we've seen him with those Pokemon. Having Tobias having a full team of Articuno, Zapdos, Moltres, Raikou, Suicune, and Entei, and Ash defeating all of them, sure, that would be cool, but what would that really mean? Nothing. It really means nothing. It doesn't mean like when he beat the Battle Frontier, or like he beat Articuno where it showed the bond between him and his Pokemon. You said, but it could do that. It could do that, but it won't, because there's no point. You know why? Because we already hit the magnum opus of DP, which is Ash vs. Paul, just the episode prior. That would completely upstage Ash vs. Paul and completely like ruin what that battle had going for it. No matter which way you look at it, Ash vs. Paul is the most important battle of the league. It's what the league and the series was building to. So having another battle that's way better than it is just gonna upstage it and honestly make it look bad. So what's there else to do? Make Ash lose, and that is fine. I don't think Ash should have won the Sinnoh League, and I'm going to be 100% honest. I don't think his skills were up to the task. And you might say, oh, but Ash could win any league, it's just that there's somebody stronger. Exactly my point. There's always somebody stronger. Ash just isn't the strongest in that region, and that's okay to accept. It's okay for Ash to lose the Sinnoh League. Like, I know everybody says, but there's nowhere else to take his character. That is also false. There has been characters around for more than 20 years. If we can still manage to write Batman and Superman and the Iron Man and Spider-Man as compelling characters, whether they be different versions or different alternatives, different timelines, if we can still write them as characters, then Ash Ketchum should be no problem. It really isn't that hard to think about. Again, this is just my opinion, but in my opinion, Ash should have not won the Sinnoh League, and I'm fine with him losing, because would you guys rather him lose again? Like, would you guys rather have him lose to a Charizard, or would you guys rather have him lose to a Latios? I would rather have him lose to a Latios, honestly, because, again, losing to a Latios sounds pretty badass. If you put that on your resume, it's like, yeah, I lost to a Latios, my Pikachu tied with it. That sounds like pretty badass, and again, that's nothing to be ashamed about. Again, I like Tobias, even though he's really not a character and he's more of a plot device. I like Tobias, but even I can admit he kinda did not need to exist. Again, this is just my opinion. I would love to hear your opinion down below. This is more I had to re-record this like 3 times because I didn't like the original version. There are things I left out, so it's gonna be like really cut. But don't worry, the original video will still stay the same. Overall, this league was the best one, and by far the longest one. The main battle was 3 episodes long, using that time to the fullest. When I did Johto a couple of months ago, I called it Sonic Unleashed. Then I called Hoenn Sonic Colors. So the natural conclusion that this is Sonic Generations. It masters the formula set by others, and I legit found this league fun to watch. Like, it was a pleasure. And the experience was elevated the whole time by, guess what? The music. Yeah, the music choices in the Sinnoh League were really weird to me, and they really stuck out because they used a lot of tracks that I was very unfamiliar with. I'm not gonna say that they're Japanese tracks, but the power theme, they use that a lot, and that song is always engaging no matter what. Not to mention, they use a bit of the Japanese OST in the Old Family Blend episode when they were showing off a montage of Ash's Pokemon, which I see why they did. There was no real reason to replace it, but I always found it weird. Not to mention, the whole music the entire time was just very engaging. Not to mention, it just felt nice to watch. Like, the music choices made sense. Like, that elevated the battle for me. Now, something that I've noticed is that if you want to watch the Sinnoh League, I recommend not rewatching DP, but rewatching a couple of episodes that build up to Sinnoh League, maybe the Vulcan Gym battle beforehand, as I think the Sinnoh League works at its best, and this happens with a lot of big moments in Sinnoh. It happens when you watch the background, like when you watch the build up. That's a lot of good parts of Sinnoh. When you watch the build up towards those good moments, they elevate your experience tenfold. So, my opinion on this league, I'm giving this league a low S rank. The reasons why I'm giving it the low S rank instead of a perfect S rank is there are some issues like not using certain Pokemon. Corphish and Totodile. There are some others like, again, Tobias being a last minute inclusion, probably one of the worst and egregious ones. And also, yeah, not using Glalie. But this league otherwise excels in all fields, including animation, and for the time, again, was Pokemon at its best. Alright, that's all I have to say. Samurai out.